ocean's surface ripples under a morning mist. In the South China Sea, a huge radar blip appears on the carrier's screen. A Chinese hypersonic missile, the latest DF-17 carrier killer, has locked onto the Supercarrier. In under 12 minutes, it will arrive. Bells and whistles explode on the bridge. Sailors grab gear. Officers shout. Can this tiny $10 million missile really sink a $13 billion floating fortress with 5,000 crew? Only one thing is certain. By the end of this confrontation, everything will have changed. Chinese weapons. China's DF-17 is a road-mobile, medium-range ballistic missile carrying a DF-ZF hypersonic glide vehicle. It boasts a range of roughly 1,600 kilometers, about 1,000 miles, and can streak at Mach 10, far faster than any subsonic anti-ship missile. State media boast that new variants, land, sea, or air-launched, of the DF-17 and its cousin YJ-21 are coming, each with enhanced penetration against ship defenses. In fact, Chinese analysts openly describe hypersonic carrier-killer missiles as a family of weapons that will adapt to every launch platform. American Supercarrier. Opposite this threat floats the U.S. Navy's carrier, a Nimitz Ford-class behemoth displacing over 100,000 tons. The USS Gerald R. Ford, CVN-78, for example, cost about $13 billion to build. It carries roughly 5,000 sailors, including the air wing, and up to around 90 aircraft, a floating air base more powerful than many nations' entire air forces. This floating fortress is protected by escorts and layers of weapons. Its escorts' Aegis radars manage hundreds of interceptors, Sea Sparrow, evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, and SM-2, SM-3, SM-6 interceptors, while close-in guns, Phalanx CIWS, are trained skyward. Decoys and electronic warfare are also on standby. Chaff and flare launchers and powerful AN/SLQ-32 radar jammers can blind incoming seekers. Battlefield. The carrier operates in contested waters, perhaps 1,000 miles from China's shore, well within Chinese missile range. On these high seas, satellites and over-the-horizon radars tentatively search for targets, but locating a moving carrier group is notoriously hard. Even if a missile were launched, it must update the target's position in flight. American strategists emphasize timing and coordination. Destroyers and cruisers form a protective bubble around the carrier, ready to fire interceptors at anything spotted. Suddenly, launch. China's missile crews fire. The DF-17 boosters roar. The hypersonic glide vehicle slices upward into the sky at Mach 10. Seconds tick away. At this speed, 1,000 miles is vanishingly brief, on the order of 10 minutes. America's radar operators strain to lock on. In one recent Chinese simulation, such hypersonic ASBMs climbed to 200 kilometers altitude and stayed invisible to carrier radars until 10 minutes after launch. By then, only 50 kilometers from the fleet. In the control room, a quarter-mile box suddenly flashes red on the display. Threat inbound. The air alarm wails and the ship's PA operator bellows orders. Planes jettison bombs. Flares pop from launchers. For a heartbeat, there is silence. Then the blip on the radar races toward the carrier at unimaginable speed. The bridge's giant screens show a small silhouette growing larger. This missile isn't on a predictable arc. It's weaving and diving as it homes in. U.S. tests have confirmed the DF-ZF glider can perform extreme maneuvers in flight. The carrier's crew holds its breath. Every second counts now. Phase 1, missile interceptors. Almost instantly, U.S. Aegis ships respond. The destroyer Zumwalt and cruiser San Jacinto lock radar tracks and fire SM-3 and SM-6 interceptors into the sky. Each interceptor streaks after the DF-17's upper stage payload. Explosions bloom in the stratosphere as some interceptors find their mark. Phalanx CIWS radars in the escort ships light up and burn holes of tracers toward the incoming warhead. But the DF-17's warhead is still barreling down. At re-entry, it may have shed speed. Some analysts estimate Mach 8 to 2 down low, but its maneuverability makes it hard to track. The first salvo of SM-3 SN-6 rockets may have missed or only partially damaged the missile's upper body. Phase 2. Electronic warfare. With kinetic defense only partially successful, the carrier's commanding officer orders maximum jamming. Antenna arrays on deck flare to life, blasting electromagnetic noise toward the attacker's sensors. Electronic warfare planes, EA-18G Growlers, climb into the skies to fry guidance signals. Chaff and flares explode into clouds around the carrier, hoping to decoy the incoming seeker. A naval analysis of Mach 10 ASBMs notes that traditional interceptors alone probably cannot stop a DF-21D, and by extension, a DF-17. So heavy electronic countermeasures are the final hedge. The carrier's AN/SLQ-32 jammers and allied craft work furiously to break the missile's lock. All the while, sailors are strapped in, eyes glued to screens, waiting to see if any of this will work. The duel reaches its climax. On the radar, the missile is now seconds from impact. For a final gambit, the carrier lunges, a hard turn, a drop of speed to throw off the aim. If the missile still homes on old target data, maybe it will splash into empty ocean. In this dramatization, the outcome is deliberately left unresolved. Did the electronic jamming save the Gerald R. Ford? Did an SM-6 warhead punch through the DF-17's warhead? We don't show it. What is clear is that the scenario changes the game forever. Chinese wargame papers make the stakes obvious. In fleet exercises, their planners have sunk U.S. Ford-class carriers by dozens of hypersonic missiles with near certainty. In one published Chinese wargame, just 24 DF-ZF-equipped missiles reportedly doomed the Gerald R. Ford and escorts. Remarkably, those analyses admit each missile needs only 2 hits at Mach 11 to cripple a carrier. American commanders publicly insist carriers remain resilient and vital. Admiral John Richardson has called the carrier perhaps the most survivable airfield in the region, emphasizing its layered defenses. But independent studies warn otherwise. A 2019 report noted that even a carrier 1,000 nautical miles from China could find its defenses overwhelmed by new missiles. U.S. experts now race to field faster interceptors, long-range fire lasers, and space-based sensors, even as some strategists argue the best defense is to destroy enemy launchers before they fire. Meanwhile, China is not standing still. Just this year, state media confirmed upgraded DF-17s and air-launched variants like YJ-21 will debut, each designed to slip past ship defenses. Hypersonic missiles will keep getting faster and more numerous, they say. The Gerald R. Ford and its sisters do still sail, but the balance is shifting. How long can America's floating fortress endure when every new Chinese carrier killer arrives faster and smarter than the last? This video is a dramatization based on open-source military information and analysis. It does not depict real events. All visuals are illustrative. This content is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only, following YouTube's guidelines. In the dawn's pale light, an uneasy silence hangs over the South China Sea. the DF-17 hypersonic glide weapon is gone, and the Ford-class carrier's fate is unknown. Our cameras cut to black as the missile nears its target, an ellipsis instead of an explosion. This unresolved finale leaves us with only questions, not certainties. We have entered a new era. Weapons like China's DF-17 fly at Mach 5 to 10 with extreme maneuvers that defy legacy defenses. In tests, US analysts observed DF-17 warheads hitting within meters of their aim, even with unpredictable flight. These missiles travel so fast and low that traditional radars barely detect them until the final seconds. Distance no longer guarantees safety. A ship hundreds of miles away may see only a moment's warning, compressing decision cycles to the brink. This scenario raises hard questions about the aircraft carrier, once the unquestioned symbol of US sea power. Planners debate whether such supercarriers can survive the new calculus. Some envision them redesigned for drone swarms, layered sensors, and directed energy defenses. Others insist carriers will adapt. Each flat top sails in a strike group with escorts, and the Ford was designed to be upgraded. Admiral Richardson argues that advanced Chinese weapons will not keep carriers at bay. Meanwhile, US forces and allies are racing to respond. Congress has allocated billions for hypersonics, and new weapons are coming. The Army's ground-launched Dark Eagle battery and the Navy's Prompt Strike missiles will field by the mid-2020s. At sea, the Navy is testing prototype lasers and high-power microwaves on destroyers. Commanders are knitting fighter jets and surveillance drones into a real-time sensor network. For example, Australia is investing in and Japan is deploying F-35s, even on its carriers, to extend its eyes over the sea. Even AUKUS allies are planning joint hypersonic tests by 2028. More broadly, this episode underscores a strategic shift in the Indo-Pacific. Once the US Navy enjoyed uncontested dominance here, China's expanding missile arsenal and A2AD doctrine have eroded that advantage. No longer can one giant carrier dominate the horizon. All sides must spread out their defenses. In fact, a top US officer warns that if an enemy can strike 5 times faster than you can strike your enemy, it incentivizes first strikes. This scenario leaves big questions. Can any single carrier assure sea control when threats travel in minutes? Will such weapons deter conflict or spark rash escalation? The unanswered ending reminds us that the real-world outcome and its impact on deterrence and escalation remains unknown. In the end, there is no tidy resolution, only a silent dawn and a sea of uncertainty. The conclusion is cinematic, silent, open-ended, leaving the future unsettled. The stakes have never been higher, and the answers are not yet written. In this new age, every admiral, every statesman, and every citizen must reckon with how to hold the line. All we have is the quiet morning watch and the echoing question of what comes next. In our dramatized scenario, one fact remains clear. The weapons of tomorrow are already among us. The DF-17 hypersonic missile, flying at Mach 5 or faster, could rewrite the rules of naval warfare. For a Ford-class supercarrier, the future looks uncertain, a reminder that every technological leap reshapes the horizon. Scenarios like this underscore how rapidly modern conflict evolves and why awareness is vital. For now, that carrier sails on, a reminder that preparation and knowledge are our greatest shields. In the silence that follows, one lesson remains. Stay informed about the tools shaping tomorrow's battles. If this deep dive into military tech and naval strategy intrigued you, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more. Our channel delivers in-depth analyses of cutting-edge weaponry and global conflict scenarios. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay informed.